Welcome to Dory Cote on Shamanism, a weekly podcast that explores one theme in shamanism throughout each month. Get comfortable, have a seat, and let's get started.
Welcome to episode 79 of this weekly podcast series on weather spirits. And this week we're going to be talking about how to befriend the weather spirits.
Dory, a listener has asked, how can we possibly be in a positive relationship with the big storms like hurricanes and tornadoes? They can cause so much destruction and kill humans and animals and plant life. How can we befriend these apparently malevolent beings?
Yes, that is a really great question, and it of course is something that impacts so many people and all beings alive on the earth when the big storms come. And the truth is that all spirits of all weather have a benevolent spirit. We see them as malevolent because of the ways in which they might cause destruction and the loss of human, animal, and plant life and sort of rearrange the earth. However, the hurricane exists, the tornado exists, the big snowstorm exists for a reason. And it's outside of the realm of our understanding a good deal of the time. Why did this happen? Why was my roof blown off? Why was my grandmother killed when her house collapsed in this hurricane? And when we take it down to the personal, and we have had destruction or loss of life, of course we're angry, of course we're upset, of course we're going to be in a state of shock and a sense of tremendous loss. And yet when we look beyond that to the bigger picture of what's happening on a universal level, then we can see that, and those of us who are trained as shamanic practitioners who work with the spirits of weather know that there is always a compassionate component to every aspect of storm, whatever the storm is. And it isn't apparent to us. However, for instance, it is possible that storm has blown into a region of the country or of the world where things really do need to be stripped clean. Something has to occur to move stagnant, stuck energy. And the storm blows through to aid that process. While it's doing its job, it also can create a very destructive kind of event, taking property and life in the process. And yet beyond what we see and what we experience is the larger purpose, which is actually benevolent. It's helping to rearrange something. It's helping to cleanse something. It's helping to move something through. And it isn't personal. It's not about the people who live in that place. It's about what the hurricane has to do. It has a job. It has a purpose. And it's doing its job, and it has an impact on us. Again, we can go back to the personal body example. For instance, if you have some kind of a heart disease or disorder that you don't have an awareness of for a long, long time, and then all of a sudden, boom, something happens to you and you end up in the hospital, and the hospital has like a negative, you think, oh, hospital, I don't want to be there. And then the surgeons have to break open your chest and rearrange something in your heart and go through surgery, and there's a mess everywhere, and you have to be in the hospital for several days, and it's not anything you wanted. It's a terrible event. But yet underneath all that destruction, all of that pain, all of that suffering, all of that being put in a place where you don't want to be, there is a higher purpose, and that is something is being repaired in your heart that is going to allow you to live a more fulfilled, hopefully beneficial life. So the storm, if we look at the big picture of the storm, it's doing something similar. It has to rearrange, it has to create, it has to destroy in order to create, just like the volcano. The volcano erupts, it destroys, it rearranges, and then new life forms around that. And that is the story of all storms. It's hard for us to wrap our heads around it. And if you've ever been in a big storm and you've been, victimized by a storm because of, loss of life or destruction of property, plants, or animals, it is really challenging to open your heart to the compassionate aspect of the storm. And yet it is important for us to understand that behind what appears to be vicious, malicious, purposeless destruction, there truly is a higher purpose. And trusting that helps bring peace to the humans who are impacted by it.
So in the last episode, you said that there was a truly loving, compassionate component behind every weather spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned in the last question also that there's compassionate energy to each weather spirit, even if it's not immediately apparent.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best way to connect with that when we might potentially be in fear
Mm-hmm.
of the impact?
Right. That is a great question. And of course, I know many listeners out there don't have a shamanic practice. They don't know how to journey, and they don't know how to connect with the benevolent aspect of the storm. And of course, storms do bring with them a great deal of fear and anxiety. And people respond, they try to find safety. Here in the United States, we just recently had this big hurricane called Matthew, and people panicked. A lot of people had to relocate for a few days. A lot of people lost property and life. In Haiti, several hundred people were killed. It seems incomprehensible to understand that there is some compassionate meaning behind all that, because it isn't obvious. There's nothing obvious about it. It seems like a very malevolent, vicious, destructive event. And of course, on the surface, it really is. And yet underneath that, if we can just step away and recognize that there is something that we cannot see in the moment, and those of us who are able to connect with the spirit of that storm, which I, of course, did, and many of my fellow practitioners did, were able to see that there is an element of this storm which desires to be as gentle as it possibly can, to do that a job that it has come to do, which is to cleanse an area of the globe that has not just necessarily physical contaminants, but in energetic contaminants that need to be cleared out and cleansed and moved and transmuted. So, my advice to people who are in a storm's path, or who are expecting to be impacted by a storm, or are being impacted by a storm, to do the best they can to go into their heart self and trust and know that the storm's arrival in your area is not personal. The storm hasn't come to harm you personally. The storm has come because it has a job to do, and you are being impacted by that. And do the very best you can to love the storm, or at least embrace the storm, or not rail against it, not demonize it, because the more we put that kind of energy into the atmosphere of damning weather events, then we are putting really negative energy into the atmosphere and potentially creating more harmful energy in the way of storms.
And after a storm, for someone whose family and property was severely impacted by a big storm, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say first, I'm really sorry that this storm has impacted you in this way and has, taken life and property, and ask you to move forward in your life the best way you possibly can, knowing that the storm's arrival at your doorstep was not personal, that the storm came because it had a job to do. And you and your family and your home, your animals, your trees, and were in the storm's path. The storm does not have an intention to come and destroy. That is not its intention. Its intention is to do the job that it's come to do, which is not apparent to us. And every storm has a different kind of purpose, and we can't know that unless we are, practicing shamans who have a connection with weather and are able to communicate with the weather. And so perhaps another thing that people can do who have been severely impacted is find somebody who can connect with the spirit of weather and help you get some answers from spirit about why this impacted you in the way it did, and what is the bigger picture.
This completes our prepared questions on befriending weather spirits. Do you have anything you want to add to this segment?
No, thank you for asking. I think I'm complete with this.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Dory Cote on shamanism. We'd love to hear your thoughts, stories, reactions, and questions. Come on over to dorycote.com and join the conversation. And tune in next week for more on this subject, or next month for a new subject. You can subscribe to this podcast in iTunes or sign up on dorycote.com to receive notices when the podcasts are posted. That's Dory, D-O-R-Y, and Cote, C-O-T-E.com. Drumming and rattling by Dory Cote and Terry Morgan. Technical assistance and audio production by JillHackett.com. And this is Susan Savelle, wishing you many blessings in your life. We hope to have you join us next time.